In this video, we're going to cover the introduction of the ACM replication. ACM replication allows you to connect up to 100 appliances at any given time, and the appliances will have ability to automatically synchronize identities, roles, policies, collaborations, gateways, physical access, and settings. The connectivity or synchronization happens as a peer-to-peer directory in ACM, which is a much more efficient way of propagating information between all the appliances. In a typical physical access control system, the servers don't have the ability to replicate as peer-to-peer. They usually use costly corporate servers such as Windows clusters and SQL databases, and they reside in a central location where the information has to be distributed by the central server to all these other regional servers. ACM works differently. Every server in the replication group will replicate to each other. So it's a peer-to-peer. And the replication is automated. It's completely automatic behind the scenes. No corporate servers or any other application is required. The functionality is within ACM, which drastically reduces the cost of deploying a replication at a customer site. ACM replication also offers a auto failover or a hot standby functionality. What you see out there in the market today typically is the ability to do primary and secondary service, so one-to-one only, and requires, as I mentioned before, some very fancy or very sophisticated and also very expensive software and licensing. Especially if you're doing it in Windows-based, it requires Windows clusters, SQL licenses, and so on. ACM does not require any of that. All the functionality to create the replication is built within ACM. Same for hot standby. And we offer in a couple of different ways. So you could do one-to-one. So basically, you have a primary server, which will replicate to a secondary server, and they'll do that behind the scenes constantly. No customer interaction is required. And if for any reason the primary server is down, the secondary server will take over automatically. You can actually configure to be automatic or manually. So you will be informed, you'll receive a notification, an alarm notification that the primary server is down, and then you can decide to go and investigate if the primary server is actually down, and if it is, then you can manually turn on the secondary server or your hot standby to take over. After that, all the controllers will send the information they've been holding since the primary server went down. If they will send over to the secondary server, and the system will go back to its normal operation. So that's one way of doing it. Or you also could use this automatic takeover. So the secondary server will monitor the primary server, pinging the primary server in certain intervals, and which is configurable by the user. And if in case that communication is broken, so primary server is down and the secondary server cannot reach the primary server in a certain amount of time, then the secondary server will automatically take over the system. So that's another method. We also offer a different solution here, which is you could have up to 4 primary servers all synchronizing to a hot standby. So in case one of the primary server is down, the hot standby will take over from that primary server that went down. So obviously, once that secondary server or the hot standby server is used, or it takes a place of a primary server, there is no availability for any other primary server to fail. So that's a solution where if the customer required is not interested in spending money or not interested in having the reliability of one-to-one, they could utilize a more affordable solution, or having up to 4 primary servers to report back or to synchronize with one hot standby. So let's take a look now at the requirements. So ACM licenses for each enterprise server using replication is required. The ACM appliance host name has to be registered with the customer's DNS server. So we need a DNS server to resolve the IP, to resolve the appliance hostname to IP, so the appliances in the network, in the replication network, can talk to each other. They will have to resolve hostname, not IP. Obviously, you need to have the IP address set to the box, netmask, gateway for each one of the appliances. By default, web service port is 443, which can be changed. You will need to define a LDAP port per appliance. Each one should have a unique port. And the event replication port by default is 6052, which also can be changed. The customer can modify that under the appliance section in ACM. Ports must be open across the network so the two or the multiple appliances can communicate with each other, especially if you have a WAN situation where you're going across maybe the internet. You want to make sure that you have the right ports open in your router, so you need to work with the IT personnel to ensure those ports are open so ACM can properly talk to those devices, to those appliances. In regards to software update, all appliances must be running the same version when you do the setup of the replication and auto failover. And if you need to apply updates after that, the proper way of doing that is, first of all, you apply the new update to the primary server, and once the primary server is updated and rebooted and is back normally, is back to its operations, then you go and update all the other servers, all the other appliances in that replication group. Here's some of the requirements. For installations using hot standby, both appliances, primary and hot standby, they need to have the same number of licenses. So if you have for door licenses, collaboration licenses, or any other license, additional license that you have in your primary server, that hot standby needs to be basic, a mirror of that primary. Besides that, both servers, primary and hot standby, need to have the auto failover license. For multiple primary servers connected to one auto failover, the hot standby appliance, it needs to have a combination of all licenses across all primary servers. So here's an example below. What we're showing here is one appliance has 256 readers, has an LDAP collaboration license, and the secondary server, slightly different, has 512 doors and a SQL collaboration and badging. So your hot standby needs to have a collection of all those different licenses and the highest number of doors. So in that case, it will be 512 doors, SQL license, LDAP license, and badging. And for the license numbers, the replication license per server is the one showing here, is the ACSWLIC rep. That's the license number that is required when you're doing replication alone. If you're doing hot standby, then in fact you need this license. You need the ACSWLICAF. This license already contains the replication license, so you don't need to add the replication license. You just add the auto failover license for all the servers that are participating in the replication. So if you have two servers, a primary and a hot standby, both servers will need to have this license. If all you have is just servers replicating, no hot standby, just replication, then every server in a replication group needs to have this license up here, the replication license. That's it for this video. Watch the next video if you're interested in the actual replication configuration. We'll have that in the next video.